Thank you for listening to this Podcast One production, available on Apple Podcasts and Podcast One.
Hello and welcome into our 2019 Beyond the Darkness Halloween special. I'm Tim Dennis in for Dave Schrader, and the way we're going to do this year's Halloween special is quite simple. We're taking your phone calls, your scary stories, and we're presenting them from throughout the year, and we're stitching them together, and we're giving you the best of your scary stories from all year round, and telling some scary stories tonight for Halloween. That's exactly how we're going to do it tonight. And we're going to start out tonight with Anna from Canada, who's going to tell us a little bit about some shadow people that looked like gingerbread men. Here's her story right now on Beyond the Darkness.
Hi, Dave and Tim. You guys are the best. Love being entertained by you and listening to your shows. I'm calling you from Toronto, Canada. I'm just going to use my middle name, which is Anna. And just wanted to tell you that when I was young, still standing in my crib, there were these, I think they were shadow people. They were sort of the shape of a gingerbread man, but they were adult sizes, and they were gray, and you could see through them. They were quite transparent. They were standing, all those adult sizes were standing around my crib, and there was only one that was about my size. It was a lot shorter. I remember this like yesterday. I screamed and punched the smaller one, and when I screamed, they disappeared, and my mother woke up because she was in the room with my sister, and of course, I don't think they saw anything because I questioned my sister later on, and she said she did not see anything. My second experience, and I'm not sure if this was ever aired or talked about on your show because I must have missed that show, but I was married. I was at my sister's cottage with my husband and my first child. She was about 18 months standing in a small crib. She was sleeping, in a small crib. And this was in my sister's cottage in a very small room. And I remember waking up because was this illuminated figure, sort of the shape of the outline of the Virgin Mary, and it was bright, 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 illuminating the room. Of course, I was frozen and worried for my daughter because the crib was right at the foot of the bed, and there was no other room except to go through this figure to get to my daughter. I thought I was hallucinating. Of course, I tried to wake up my husband, but that didn't work. Put my head under the covers thinking I was hallucinating, peeked again, and it was still there. It exuded a very malevolent vibe, and I was scared out of my mind. I was so frozen, I don't think I could have gotten up to get to my daughter because I was just frozen in fear.
We go to Koo now in St. Paul where, we talk sometimes about how orbs can never hurt you. In fact, they're just mistakes in your camera, but it turns out that in Koo's case, orbs actually do haunt and do harm. Here's Koo from St. Paul.
Hi, Tim and Dave. This is Koo. I am from St. Paul, Minnesota as well. So this happened to me when I was in my late teens. My sister owns this duplex here in St. Paul, Minnesota. Before we purchased it, though, my cousin, who was really into the paranormal, took many pictures just to see if the house has any ghostly presence. Anyways, she did end up taking lots of pictures with many orbs. She did warn us about the house, but we disregarded her warnings, only thinking that the orbs were just dust. We were wrong. The duplex was highly haunted, and there was something ungodly there. Anyways, there was an incident where I had a huge argument with my sister and ran upstairs to the empty top portion of the duplex. I hid in the open doorless closet, and was just full of anger. And then I recall just hearing voices to end my life and to run away and just all these negativity. Anyways, I stayed up there for about 30 minutes and came to a conclusion that I need to man up and go downstairs to apologize to my sister. As I was on my way downstairs, I stopped halfway because at that split second, there were a lot of house lights flying all around me. It was crazy. Almost like the Amityville horror scene with that priest towards the beginning of the movie. There were at least hundreds of them just flying around me. And then I started hearing someone running down the stairs at me at full speed right behind me. I froze in terror, not knowing what to do. Then all of a sudden, in that split second as well, something pushed me from my back as I flew right into the door as it flung open wide by itself, leading me to my sister's presence. I don't know who pushed me, but all I know for a fact is that something saved me from that thing running after me. As we made up and apologized, I told my sister the incident that happened to me. She had this confused look and asked me why I disregarded her presence when she went up to talk to me in the closet. I was speechless because for the whole time I was upstairs, I never saw my sister nor hear her coming up to grab me. She got more confused, and with an assured face, she did mention that I looked pale. And when she saw me, she said my eyes never blinked the whole time she was there. I don't know what she saw or what happened.
All right, thank you, Koo. That's, there you go. Evidently, sometimes orbs do actually haunt you and do harm. So there you go. That's Koo from St. Paul. We appreciate you calling in. Again, this is a 2019 Beyond the Darkness Halloween special. We appreciate you tuning in on this Halloween. And we'll continue here with your phone calls. We go to Ryan in Austin, Texas, where it turns out that the demons that they sing about on death metal actually sometimes are real. Let's go to Ryan now in his phone call.
Hello, gentlemen. My name is Ryan Roschke, and I live in Austin, Texas. I've learned about your show through Tom Bernard. I'm from Minnesota myself, New Prague. And I wanted to share a story I had, an experience I had back in 2009. It was actually September 9th, 2009. I worked for the city of Austin, and we were doing a training class in one of the high-rise buildings down there, and it is probably a block away from Stubbs Barbecue, which is an outdoor concert venue. And it was about after lunch, we started hearing this band started practicing. Well, the band sounded real gruff and real screaming into the mic, and everyone was kind of joking about it, and we could hear them plain as day, and we were, stories above them, and a block and a half away, and we could hear their music pretty loudly. Well, it was about the end of the class, and, they were still practicing, and everyone said goodbye, and we walked out, and I was parked on the top floor of the ground or parking garage, and the minute I hit the elevator doors opening to the parking garage, I had a sense of fear and anxiety just overcome me. And I couldn't understand it, but it was overwhelming, and it was very, very just, fearful. And when I got to the top floor, which is open parking, I just felt like I was in the middle of a column of demons. That's what I call it anyways, a column of demons. I just felt, I couldn't see them, but I just felt just things just flying past me. And, I just got very fearful and just ran to my car. So I got into my vehicle, and I started calming down and said a little prayer and relaxing. Well, I got very curious about what that was. And I don't know why, but I felt it was tied to the music. So I drove around towards Stubbs Barbecue to find out if I could see who exactly is playing there that evening. Well, I turned the corner. When I turned the corner, it was a tour bus, and on the side of the tour bus was a naked woman with a goat's head and an upside-down pentagram sitting on a throne. And I knew exactly, this had to have been them. So I went home, researched who was playing at Stubbs that night, and it was an Icelandic band called Dimor Borgir. And they're a dark metal band, just satanic, if you will. But it was in the middle of the daytime, and it just completely freaked me out and really opened my eyes to the trueness of good and evil and the spirits. But listen to your show. Keep up the great work, and I thank you guys. Bye.
Kind of a scary story, isn't it? Well, Ryan, I don't know, man. I've been listening to metal for a lot of years, and I've never had any experience like that. But good God, God go with you, buddy. That's an awesomely scary story. Let's go a little closer to home. Let's go now to Mike in Farmington. He has a kind of a creepy story about a shadow on the road that turns out to be a little something more than just a shadow. Let's go to Mike now here in Farmington, Minnesota.
Hello, Dave and Tim. My name is Mike. I'm from Farmington, Minnesota. And I've been listening to you since I first heard about you on the Tom Bedard podcast. I've been meaning to email in about things that have happened to me, starting from back when I was 4 years old. Tonight I'm calling you about something that just happened a little over an hour ago. I was driving my daughter to a friend's house down Highway 66 in Farmington, and looking out my driver's side mirror, my daughter all of a sudden yelled, "Dad." I looked over to her to see what was wrong, thinking maybe she forgot something, but she had this scared look on her face. And she said something just ran on the road really fast and stopped right in the middle, and once you got up to it, disappeared. Over a few things, thinking it might have been an animal, a shadow, from a mailbox, and she said no. And by this time, she was crying, and she said she couldn't figure out why she was crying. She was just really sad and really scared. She said she saw a dark shadow come on the road really fast, get to the center of the road, and stood straight up. Once I got to it, it disappeared. So we kept on driving, got to her friend's house. I got her to calm down. I told her on my way back I will stop, drive down there and make sure there's not a wounded animal or something on the side. And she got that scared look on her face again and said, "Please do not go down there. I know what I saw, and I saw a ghost." Well, I left, and the thing I did not tell my daughter is at that time when she yelled, "Dad," I all of a sudden got this rush through my body where I couldn't breathe, and I got really scared, and I don't get scared. And this was a scared feeling like I was lost, and the next thing I realized at the exact same time, my pick felt like something just grabbed onto it. And it would just all happen at the same time, and I do believe that what she saw was a black shadow, and it affected both of us, and it was very interesting. And I did drive by there again, and I ended up getting the same feeling, and the truck ended up acting the exact same way. I will call in again sometime with starting back to when I was 4 years old. It was the first time I had a paranormal event. Thank you guys for the years of all the great entertainment, and you both take care. Goodbye.
All right. Thanks, Mike. Again, we see a lot of stuff on the highway when we're out there, and sometimes maybe it's fatigue, maybe it's just, the hum of the road that makes us think we're seeing stuff. But Mike, definitely thinks he saw something out there that night, and who knows, maybe he did. One of the subjects that definitely creeps a lot of people out and kind of gets me a little bit too sometimes is the UFO and alien deal. And Wayne called us, and he had an interesting phone call. Let's go to him now, and let's talk to Wayne about UFOs.
Hey, my name is Wayne, and one time me and my girlfriend were at home, and I heard a tap on our front window. So I thought someone was messing around. I went outside real quick and heard what sounded like 3 heavy men running up the roof away from me. But the thing was, no one was there, except for like a square shadow in the corner of the roof. And when I went in the house, my wife was like, "Who's on the roof?" And I said, nobody. Also, a spirit used to, every time I would pass out on the computer chair, it would knock near me and wake me up. Like, almost every time. That stopped. I told you guys another story about I walked out front and there was an orb, like UFO, directly above my house, about 600 feet up. And I said, "Hey, get out here, an effing UFO." And when I said that, it disappeared. So then I said, "Can you show yourselves again?" And it lit up again further away. And I continued to ask that 3 more times. And each time they turned their lights back on, but they were further away until they finally looked like a moving star. And I know I'm a contactee, but they don't let me remember much. I have many other stories of UFOs and ghosts, but I'll tell you all later. Take care. Later, Dave. Later, Tim.
All right, there you go. Thanks for the phone call, Wayne. We appreciate it. And again, you can always call us with your stories here on the Voices from Beyond line on Beyond the Darkness. 651-300-4977 is the number. 651-300-4977. The beautiful thing about that line is it's open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And you can always call us and leave your stories in 3-minute increments. Again, if you're not finished telling your story in 3 minutes, you can just simply let the call end. You can call us back and continue calling or rather telling your story. And remember just to tell us who you are and that you're continuing your story. And then I'll take and I'll splice your story together and we'll make it a little bit longer story than normal. Just don't go into the Odyssey and make it a very long story, or go into your version of War and Peace. And we'll continue your story on from there. Just don't make it a huge deal. That's all. I mean, keep it to within 10 minutes or so. After 10 minutes, I don't think you've got much anything but rambling. Speaking of rambling, I should probably stop rambling. Let's go to our next story. Donna is a seasoned paranormal investigator, and she hasn't seen anything up until now. Well, that is, now she's seen something. And she's seen her first full-body apparition. It's kind of an interesting one. We'll let her tell you about it. Here's Donna now to tell us about her first full-bodied ghostly apparition.
Hi, my name is Donna. I have been a paranormal investigator for over 30 years, and I finally saw my first apparition as I was going down a side road to come to my home. It was a soldier in full uniform, and he had a big dog next to him. And they were just standing there, and I waving, and I stopped to see the dog, and I turned around. They were gone. And that is my paranormal investigation site. That's my first apparition that I've ever saw. And it was very exciting, and, chills up the spine. It was great. So I hope you use this one, and good luck with everybody else. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Donna. I know myself, having been on plenty of investigations, I don't know that I'd call myself a seasoned paranormal investigator. Maybe I would. That's kind of exciting to see your first full-bodied apparition. That's kind of an interesting one to see, a soldier and his dog. But hey, you've seen it, and congrats, and we appreciate the phone call. Let's move on. You know, when you've grown up in a haunted house, I take it every occasion or some occasions are more impactful than others. This lady, Cassie, called in and gave us quite a few instances that are kind of, hey, whoa, wait a minute moments. And you kind of want her to slow down and go into the different incidents, but she kind of peppers us with a lot of big stuff. Here's Cassie, and she tells us about this haunted house and how she had a protector in that house. Here's Cassie now to tell us the rest of the story.
Hi, I'd like to just have a surname of Cassie here. I don't want to give my real name out, but I've been around the paranormal ever since I was born. I've had so many encounters. There was a demon living in my closet as a child. The door opened up by itself, woke me up. I looked in and I saw a dark figure move. I heard a growl, saw two red eyes. So I know that was real, even though my parents never did believe me. A murder and suicide happened in the house. That's why it's haunted. I call her the mother of the house because I never did know her name, but she looked after me. She would open and door closes all the time. Her son is still there too as well, her youngest son. He would always play pranks on us. I feel that the other two older sons left. They accepted their death, but the younger son didn't accept his death, and that's why he's still there, and the mother is still there looking after her youngest. After I've moved, my parents have even called me saying that they were tuning music from my room when I had no stereos in there. Both of them had called me on several occasions saying that they thought that the other one went to bed with them, and they turned over to snuggle with them, and no one was there. My new place now here, something has been following me. My smoke detector has gone off in a Morse code way, which is weird. My cat has been acting funny. I've had to bless my place twice. I've had to go to a priest to get blessed. I've been scratched twice. I've been hearing knocks. So, yeah, there's a lot that's been going around in my life. Mom even told me that as an infant, a light bulb shattered around my crib, but all the glass was around my crib, not a single piece on me. She said that was so weird, and I just looked her in the eyes, and I knew what was going on. I said it was the mother of the house that saved me. I've experienced a lot. I've heard a lot, felt a lot. Things have followed me home.
Interesting stuff, Cassie. I tell you, you had a heck of a upbringing there, lady. I don't know that I would remain sane as a kid if I were going through a lot of that stuff that you went through there. That's really quite interesting. Man, what an upbringing. What an upbringing. Let's continue on. You know, we go from a haunted house to a generational ghost who actually makes an appearance and shakes up the dynamic a little bit during the middle of the phone call. We have Stephanie from New Mexico who calls in, and as she's talking about a generational ghost that she believes not only has affected her but her family as well, it seems to make an appearance in the phone call and interrupt the phone call. It's weird. You got to hear it for yourself. Here's Stephanie from New Mexico now to tell us a little bit about this generational ghost.
Hey, Dave, and of course, hey, Tim. My name is Stephanie. I actually was born in New Mexico, so, you know, everyone who is EP fans, I've heard a lot and seen a lot of different things growing up that I can't really explain. A lot of open skies, not that much pollution going on there, so you see and witness, and you get to hear people's stories. But I'm actually calling because I believe my family and I have a ghost that has followed us through generations. My dad's experienced things I've experienced, including sleep apnea of the same man standing at our bedside. I've had people who are sensitive. Well, my mom's trying to wake me up in the middle of the night while the man was standing on the side of my bed, grabbing my legs and telling me to sell my soul and just trying to convince me to do very bad things. And while I was trying to say no, my mouth would get watery and I couldn't say anything. And at that moment, she woke me up telling me there was a man standing in our stairway that ran to my room. So she ran to wake me up, and she didn't know that. I actually have a lot of stories from a lot of my family who've had the same experiences, if not a lot worse than I've had. But this ghost of mine doesn't leave me alone. Matter of fact, I was scared to make this phone call because I've done a good job ignoring him. And when you give him attention, he seems to like it. He likes to keep you on your toes. But thank you for listening. If you ever have anything you want to ask away. I'm going to give you my number. Please, Tim, Dave, block out my number. Thank you.
What'd you think about that one, huh, folks? Kind of weird, huh? Right in the middle, the phone call just kind of blips out and then it comes back. That's bizarre. I mean, I've heard stuff like that before, and you think it's just a blip in the phone line, but yeah, very weird indeed. Let's continue on. We're going to go just a little bit to the east of New Mexico. We go to West Texas, where Jesus is waiting for us, and he's got a weird story about some ghosts that are bothering his kid. They have no face, and they're dressed in white suits. This one will send chills up your spine. Here's Jesus from West Texas.
Hey, Mr. Dave, Mr. Tim. This is Jesus, not Jesus, by the way. I sent in a story of my experience in Borger, Texas, West Texas, actually. Did want to actually share another little story. It actually involves my 11-year-old son. He lives with his mom in Houston, and before they moved into the house that they currently live in now, he was staying in a different house that was shared by his stepdad's, mom, and I believe with one of his brothers or just some other family members. And so because of that, him and his mom stayed in the same room. He slept on what he said was like a little couch or something on the side. His mom slept in a bigger bed. But he told me several times while he was sleeping, he would all of a sudden wake up and he would feel somebody looking at him or just watching him. He told me that at first he wouldn't want to wake up fully or even open his eyes, but when he finally would, or get brave enough to actually look and see what was staring at him, he said that he would be looking at this person. He knew it was an older gentleman, even though it had no face. He said it was all white, wearing like a white suit, wearing a hat, which when he first told me that there was a gentleman with a hat watching him, I instantly thought of the Hat Man, but he did say that it was an older gentleman, all in white, so I'm not sure if it's even a similar guy or somebody different. But besides this gentleman, there was also a little girl. The little girl, just the same, also didn't have a face and was also all in white. He did say somehow he knew that they were like staring at him, even though they had no eyes, no mouth, no nose or anything, and that the gentleman would stand there and just watch him while the little girl was kind of cowering over behind him. He said one time she was behind a curtain. She was kind of hiding, almost like she was a little frightened. Definitely scared him. But even in that state, he said he wouldn't say anything. As much as he wanted to get up and go to his mom, he was just like, he just didn't want to get up. As far as him telling me the story, of course, as a parent, it freaked me out. Definitely was, worried for him. But thankfully now they're no longer in that home. He no longer is experiencing anything. So apparently whatever was there in that house is no longer following him. So thank you for, sharing this. And I'll be sharing some more stories later.
What'd you think of that one, huh? No face, just staring. And then the one little girl who peeks behind the curtain from behind the curtain and gets a look at you without looking at you. No eyes. Ugh, 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 no, thank you. I tell you what, let's go back to the subject of UFOs. Again, I find UFOs fascinating. Zach calls us from Eugene, Oregon. And Zach has some interesting stories from the wilds out there in Eugene, Oregon. Just a little forefront or a little bit of a disclaimer here for you. Zach was a little nervous because Zach has a bit of a stuttering issue. But you know what? I don't think it's that bad. In fact, I don't think it's bad at all. But we want to play these experiences from Zach because they're very interesting. So here's Zach from Eugene, Oregon, in his UFO experiences.
What is up, Tim and Dave? I want to start off by saying I love your guys' podcast. It is amazing. I've been listening to it for about 2 years now. I want to let everyone know that I do have a speech impediment and a stutter. So this is difficult for me to do, but it's something that I've been wanting to do. And I want to tell you guys my story. So I live in Eugene, Oregon, and I had an experience a couple years ago about Bigfoot. We were camping out in Whitaker Creek, and we were out in the woods about 11 p.m., and me and my buddies were just hanging out, and we heard something in the bush there, and we all kind of got spooked out, and we were looking at it, and we couldn't see anything. But then when we all stood up and started walking towards it, we heard a loud snapping sound, and we freaked out. We got into the car. One of my buddies stupidly took a .22 and shot at it. And that was stupid because, you know, that could have been a person or anything. Luckily, it wasn't. But we all got in the car, and as we swung around on the pavement, we seen what we believed was a Bigfoot. It was about 7.5, 8 feet tall. And this pavement is probably 10 feet wide, maybe 12 feet wide. And it took 2 steps on the pavement, 1, 2, and it was right over it. And then it goes up this, like mountain ridge that is, I mean, almost a 75-degree angle. And it just climbs it, and just boom, 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 and it's gone. We don't see it for the rest of the night. We were pale as a ghost, and it was probably the craziest thing I've ever seen. And then I want to tell you, I had a UFO encounter where I believe was probably about 6 years ago or so, out in a small town called Coburg, Oregon. And we were walking down the road about 2 a.m. and we seen this bright light, and it just flashed over the mountains, and we didn't know what it was. I personally thought it was a UFO, just because I believe in it. However, I was talking to my dad, and he thought it was the Northern Lights, because they do that every however many months it is, or whatever. And so I thought that was pretty interesting. And that's pretty much all the paranormal and UFO stuff I've encountered. I want to say thanks again for letting me share, and I apologize for anyone that has a hard time understanding me. To Dave and Tim, you're awesome, and I want to let Dave know that thank you for talking openly about suicide and depression. It has helped me a lot, actually, like in words that can't be explained. You guys are awesome. My name is Zach Hodson. Thanks again. Bye.
All right. Great job with that one there, Zach. And again, I'm not going to belabor the point, but I thought you did a great job with your telling of the story there, Zach, and that's a reason why we replayed that a second time. You did an excellent job conveying your story there, Zach, and congratulations on that. We're going to move on to Fresno, California. And, you know, jail is spooky enough as it is if you ever get caught in jail. But it's even more spooky when you are working in jail and you happen to have a ghostly encounter and then share that with an inmate. I'm not going to go any further. I'm just going to let it explain itself. Here's that story right now.
Hi, Tim. Hi, Dave. I'm excited to share my story with you guys. I have a story from a prison that I used to work at. And it was out in the middle of the desert in Southern California. And I got called late in the shift to work overtime. And it was a building that years ago used to be a bowling alley. The rest of the prison used to be a mining town. And there was a giant open pit mine that was on the other side of the prison. And basically they just, once the mine closed down, they converted everything to jail facilities, and even some of the housing became our housing as an incentive for us to work there. It was quite a spooky, weird place, and especially at night in the desert, it's quite interesting at night. So I had to work overtime in one of the giant buildings that used to be a bowling alley, like I said, and we conserved energy at night, so lighting was down to a minimum. And I was basically babysitting an inmate that was getting transferred out the next day. You can't just lock inmates up in buildings and leave them there alone. So he was secured in his own little side room, and I was in an adjacent room where I can hear him and I could check on him occasionally, but he was asleep. And I was at a desk and basically just reading magazines and biding my time working a graveyard shift overtime. And I could hear a noise at the far end of the building after I'd been in there about 2 hours. And it sounded like someone with a giant set of keys on his side walking, and the keys were just jingling and jangling and making noise, but it was in the dark end of the building. And at first I thought it was one of the other guards just making the rounds, doing security check rounds. And so I called out and no one answered. And I could still hear the sound coming towards me. So as I'm staring into the darkness, I could hear the sound of footsteps now with the jingling keys coming towards me. I still couldn't see anything, and I'm calling out. And I turned on all the lights, and no one was there. So I got on my radio and asked if anyone was doing security checks, and everyone responded no, and I thought they were pranking me. So I turned the lights back off, went back to my desk, and I really heard the sound of the keys and the footsteps right behind me as I was facing the desk with my back to the darkness. And then I felt a whoosh of air as if someone ran past me. I actually felt the air whoosh past me. And that's when all the hair on my body stood up. I went into, flight mode instead of fight mode, because how do you fight something you can't see? So the only thing I could think of doing was going into the adjacent room and waking up the inmate. And I yelled into his cell, "Hey, wake up! Wake up!" And he woke up and he's like, "What's wrong, officer?" And I said, "Hey, there's something in here with us. And it's not human, and I think it's a ghost. And he became afraid. And so we just kind of stood with the bars between us, talking to each other the rest of the night until my relief came. And we were both very afraid. And when my relief came, he goes, how'd it go? And I said, well, not so good. And he goes, what do you mean? I said, I think this place is haunted. And he goes, oh yeah, we all know. We were just curious to see if the ghost had came in to say hi to you too. So I was just kind of perturbed that they didn't give me any kind of warning, and I left. And so that's my experience at a haunted prison. Thank you guys. I love your show. I love your guys' banter. I'm glad Tim's feeling better. Take care.
How about that, huh? Ugh. Creepy. I can't imagine being locked up and then having to deal with something unseen. That to me is just a wee bit frightening. Our last story before the break comes from Steve in California. We returned back to California. Steve had a bit of a unusual place where he was staying, as in actually staying, like sleeping. Steve took up residence in a movie theater where he was security. I guess that's kind of a good gig if you can get it. Although where he was sleeping was unusual and what he encountered was even more unusual. Let's go to Steve now and he'll tell you the rest of the story.
Hey, Dave and Tim. This is Steve from California. I was calling because I had an experience, you could say, at one point in my life when I was younger. I lived in a movie theater. It was a single-plex theater, so it had one screen. And it was rather old. It was an original theater back in the town that it was in. It's been there for years and years and years. Either way, I slept on a futon on the stage behind the screen. The owner was nice enough to let me rent out the area, and I was his nighttime security. Either way, one night as I'm sleeping, I wake up to what sounded like someone walking on the stage. It was a wood stage. With an empty floor below, so you could hear the creaks. And I couldn't get up. And everyone chalks it up to sleep paralysis. But this is the only time this has ever happened in my life. It's never happened before that. It's never happened after that. It's just this one time. And I kind of chalked out, who's there? I have a knife. Because I did. I sleep with a knife. And then I kind of worked my way up to an elbow. And then like 30 seconds later, I was able to completely get up. But I've never been able to explain it. It might have been sleep paralysis. I'm not sure. I don't know. But that was my experience in an old-time theater, hearing someone possibly walk on the stage and just not being able to move at all for a minute. Not a minute, a couple of seconds, and then being able to work my way up. I was able to talk, but I wasn't able to move. It was absolutely terrifying, and I hope I never have to go through anything like that again. Thanks for letting me share my experience. I got two more, but I know you guys got the time limit, so I hate it, and I know you hate it, but there's stories for another time. Keep up the good work. I'm absolutely loving Beyond the Darkness, and I hope you guys have a great day. Thanks.
That one is bizarre indeed, Steve. Not only down to your arrangements. I mean, sleeping in a movie theater on the stage is bizarre indeed, but then on top of it, to have those footsteps, those eerie footsteps coming at you and not being able to respond, that in itself is just kind of spine tingling. Well, again, we're at the halfway point here in our 2019 Halloween special. We're taking your phone calls and hearing your stories, your spooky stories here on Halloween, and relaying them back to you, the listeners. And again, you can give us your spooky stories anytime you want. Your paranormal experiences, anything that you've had to do with the paranormal, on our Voices from Beyond line, 651-300-4977, 651-300-4977. That line is open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and it's a 3-minute loop on that line. You just call in, you give us your story, and if you can't fit it in 3 minutes, don't worry about that. You can call back, continue your story, and I'll take and use my technical abilities, such as they are, splice your story back together, and we'll make a go of it. Just don't make it too long. Otherwise, you're rambling kind of like I am right now. But we'll come back. And when we come back, we'll have more stories here for you and some interesting ones. We've got a haunted funeral home. We've got footsteps in a family home. We've got a black-eyed kid and a black-eyed grandpa and some shadow hissers. Much, much more. We've got some great stuff coming up in the second half of our 2019 Halloween special. It's all coming up next, right here on Beyond the Darkness. As always, a big thank you for listening to our show. We'd like to ask you a small but very important favor, and it'll only take a few minutes, and if you're one of the first people to do it, Podcast One will make it worth your time, literally. We need you to complete a short survey because the information you give us can help make things better for the show and you as a listener. Just go to podcastone.com/survey and everything will be right there for you. That's podcastone.com/survey. The first 250 people who complete that survey will get a $10 gift card to Amazon.com. And 2 grand prize winners will be selected at random to get a $100 Amazon gift card. Now, how about that? Free money. It's a win-win. Our shows are supported by advertisers, so filling this out will really, really help us cater to the needs of you as a listener. So please go to podcastone.com/survey. Answer some questions and potentially make some money along the way. Thank you for being a dedicated listener. Dave and I here at Beyond the Darkness appreciate you.
Beyond the Darkness.
Welcome back to the 2019 Halloween special here on Beyond the Darkness. I'm Tim Dennison for Dave Schrader. And in this Halloween special, we're taking your phone calls, your best phone calls that you gave us from throughout the last couple of years, and we're replaying them for you here in a very spooky special, kind of like a little Halloween campfire where you can all gather around the glow of our digital devices and kind of enjoy a little spooky story as you're gobbling down your Halloween candy before you head to bed. At least that's if your parents are letting you have it. I don't know about you, but my parents always confiscated my candy the night I brought it home because they had to check it for razor blades and drugs and stuff like that. But funny, half of it was gone the next morning. Must have been all those razor blades and drugs that were in the candy. I trusted them, I guess. I don't know. Spooky. Let's continue on. We've got some great stories here from our listeners. Again, if you want to leave us your spooky story anytime during the year, you can do so. 651-300-4977. That's our Voices from Beyond line. We want to hear your paranormal experiences, your spooky stories, things that have happened to you throughout the years. And we'll take it. We'll put it on the air here for everybody to enjoy or for everybody to listen to or even to respond to. If you have a question for us as well, you can ask it on that line, 651-300-4977. If it's longer than the 3-minute loop that's available to you there, just call back. Continue your story. And I will splice them together, and we'll make it the longer story that it is. Just don't go on for 15, 20 minutes, because then it's a diatribe, and nobody likes a diatribe. Unless you're a holy man and you've got a following, then everybody loves a diatribe. Why not? Let's continue on. We've got a story from Southwest Minnesota. Dan calls in, and he's got an unusual ghost in his house. This ghost is a little spookier than most, and Dan's got an unusual way to combat it. Here's Dan now in Southwest Minnesota.
Hello, my name is Dan. I live in Southwest Minnesota. Used to live in Albertville, suburb of Minneapolis, St. Paul. Lived there for about 12 years. I have a number of stories that it's happened to me my whole life. Everything from full apparitions to things moving right in front of me. But the one that really stuck out the most At the time, my son was about 3-4 years old, right in that area. It happened for about 4 months. He would religiously sleep with his mother in my bedroom, which left me on the couch. Well, over time, I realized that he refused to go in his room at nighttime, and then starting to refuse to go into his room during the day. Well, I just attributed that to he liked sleeping with Mom. Until one day, it was about 4 o'clock. We were getting our stuff ready. It was a Saturday afternoon. We were going to go have some supper with some family. And had him in my arms. We had to run into his room to grab a sweatshirt for him. And he, as I was going into his room, he grabbed the door and would not let go and started screaming. And then my pug, Coffee Bean, actually started biting at my ankles. And mind you, this is a dog that adored me and I adored her. So that night when we got back, I laid down on the couch thinking about everything that's been going on. And I guess I should probably mention that I do have kind of a sense for this. Stuff tends to happen to me all the time. Really don't want to delve into that a whole lot right now in this message, but so I'm laying on the couch and my son's room is down the hallway but kind of angled so I can see in his room. And we had a half moon nightlight. I'm laying there, it's about 11 o'clock, and for some reason I'm focusing down the hall, just feeling like somebody's down there, and then I saw somebody go from my bedroom into his room, and then the nightlight went off. Now, 2 things. First thing is the nightlight was a push switch, so it's not a dial of any sort. It wasn't shorted out. And another was I was kind of figuring why my ex-wife, we're divorced now, I was wondering why she would get up just to go shut the nightlight off. She wasn't that type of woman. So I immediately, without taking my eyes off the door, and sure enough, there's nobody in the room. Look at my bedroom, and my ex-wife and my son are sound asleep on my bed. So I decided, enough's enough. I ain't going to have this in my house, and I'm going to take care of my son. So the next night, I slept in his room. And I woke up in the middle of the night, about 2 o'clock in the morning, and I had the shades open, and the street lights were lighting up the room, and the corner was completely dark. And I woke up because I knew somebody was there with me. And I sat up and forcefully told him, this is my house. I'm not going to have this. You're not going to scare my children or my wife. Get out. And it didn't do anything. And then I stood up and I told him that I would help destroy you. And the corner started to lighten up. And the next day my ex-wife came to me and said, you're not going to believe this, and went in there, and sure enough, my son was coloring at his table in his room. That wasn't the only thing that happened in that house, or to me. Like I said, there was a lot more. And the house was built in 2005, so it's not like it was an old house. Apparently, I just have a light to me that attracts the paranormal. So, wanted to give you another one. This happened in Albertville again. It was a Sunday, and typically every other weekend I would go down and help my dad, my brother. We'd pour some concrete, and I would come home Sunday afternoon. Well, Sunday around noon, I was pretty tired, so I laid down on my mom and dad's couch and took a nap. And I woke up to a phone call from my ex-wife asking me where I was, very demanding. And I told her, I said, I'm at mom and dad. She says, no, quit messing with me. You better tell me where you are. And I said, well, I'll call mom and dad's house phone. This is people that still have landlines. And so she's like, okay, well, I believe you. Just get home. Everything okay? Yeah, everything's okay. So I get in the truck and I get home. And I go in there and she's sitting in the bedroom. And apparently her and my son got home, and my son was pretty dirty, so she went to go give him a shower. And mind you, I have a house alarm, ADT, and she always had it set. And all of a sudden she heard my voice say, "I'm home," and my son heard it and looked there and said, "Dad's home." So she went out, nobody there. I tend to scare her once in a while, so she started hollering for me, and obviously I wasn't there. The alarm was still set. She looked outside. The truck was there, and I got the call. So thank you. Really enjoy your show. Bye.
Well, Dan, I would say you're probably a lot braver than most when it comes to coming face to face with a ghost. But I know a lot of people who, when confronted with, protecting their families, would probably do a lot of the same. They'd tend to have a little more chutzpah than most, that's for sure. Let's go to Canada. Oh, Canada. New Brunswick, to be exact, where there's a haunted funeral home. We talk to a lot of people who run funeral homes, and you'd be surprised that most of them are pretty comfortable with the way that their place of work is set up, and they're not quite afraid of what they might run into there. But this funeral home director was so creeped out that she wrote out her story to read it to us, so she had the details correct. Let's go to that story now.
Hi, Tim and Dave. My name is Tasha, and I am from New Brunswick, Canada. I work in a funeral home, and I have a couple of stories to share about one of our locations. The building is your stereotypical old house that one would picture when they think about funeral homes. Usually as a staff, we do not scare easily, but this place literally gives everyone the creeps, especially in the basement. The reception room and chapel are located in the basement of the funeral home, so when we are working there, we often have to go down at night to tidy up and ensure all the doors are locked and the lights are out, which is the most horrifying part, obviously. There is a dark energy down there. Even the cleaner prefers not to go to the basement after dark. Many of my coworkers have had weird experiences in the building, like hearing voices or feeling a rush of cold air, almost like someone bumping into you, but of course, no one's there. I was working there one weekend and was alone in the building and was sitting at the reception desk on the main floor. The door leading to the chapel downstairs was being held open by a brick. I sat there and watched the door to the chapel slam shut. The brick that was holding the door open literally flew away from the door. It made me think about when you are mad at someone and you slam a door. That's exactly what happened. Being a fan of paranormal shows and radio shows, I immediately went into debunking mode. There were no windows open, no drafts happening, and I was completely alone in the funeral home. Needless to say, I left early that day. On other occasions, I have been working there alone and heard a male and female voice arguing upstairs. I had went up to where the casket selection room is, which is where I heard the voices from, and there was nobody there. I could not make out what the people were saying, but I could tell their voices were raised, and there was a male and a female. I checked the offices and even went outside to see if maybe I was hearing people from one of the other businesses, but once again, I was completely alone. Other people I have worked with have heard a woman singing in the chapel, and many of the embalmers claim to see a man in a blue suit who walks around the back of the funeral home and comes and goes from the embalming room. More than once, we'll call to one another to see if they're working in the prep room, but when you go in there, no one is there. I'm not sure what would inspire a ghost to stick around the funeral home, but we definitely have a couple of ghostly visitors who like to spend time with us. Thank you guys so much for allowing me to tell my story, and thank you for making my life a little bit more spookier. I really appreciate you both. I'm sorry if this sounds like I'm reading, but I totally am reading. I had to write it down so I could make sure I told the story properly. Thanks again for everything, and I hope you both have an amazing and spooky Halloween. Bye.
Well, you know what they say, when in Rome, run like hell. Well, I don't know about that, but, if you were working in a funeral home, wouldn't you expect a few ghosts to just pop up and, be there? I don't know. If you were, I would think, afraid of the dead, I don't think a funeral home would be the first place I'd work. I'm just saying. Let's continue on with the ghost theme. Let's go to Chris in Southern California, where he heard some eerie footsteps in his family home.
Hey, Dave and Tim. My name is Chris, all the way from SoCal. I have an interesting story for you guys. When my cousin and I were little, back home I live in an area called Palmville, California. This area is a little, like an hour away from Bakersfield. Growing up, him and I have always experienced paranormal activity, especially at the house I grew up in. So, not to bore you guys, anyway, at my house where I grew up at, it was my younger sister's 15, and everybody left to get things for the after party after we came back from church. So it's just me and my cousin waiting for the guys to bring the water slide that my cousin at the time, this was back when Facebook was around, sorry about that, MySpace, he was talking on MySpace with his girlfriend, and we heard the door kind of creak open coming from down the hallway from my sister's room. And I told him, I asked him, did you hear that? And he tensed up and noticed he didn't reply to me. And little by little, the footsteps were sounding louder and louder. We were at the kitchen, just waiting to see if something happened. A couple seconds pass by and we hear a scream next to our ears, and that's the moment we rush out of the house. We stayed outside until our parents came. Nobody believed us. It was weird because there's always something going on in that house. Just like the times I heard my name being called and nobody was home. Well, that's my short story. Sorry if I'm all over the place. Sorry if there's noise in the background. I'm actually driving to pick up my daughter right now. But I hope you guys enjoyed that story.
All right. Thanks for the phone call there, Chris. We appreciate it. Again, if you want to leave us your story, 651-300-4977 is the number for our Voices from Beyond line. You can leave your calls at any time at our Voices from Beyond line, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And again, 3 minutes is about what the limit is there on that line. If it is longer than 3 minutes, just call back, and I will stitch them together, and we'll make a nice little story out of your real life paranormal experience or spooky experience there. This one's unusual. You know, we think of a ghost experience being one that we live with, one that's in our home, but do you ever run into a ghost while you're building a home? That's a good question. Let's go now to a listener who is a contractor and happened to run into one while on the job. Here's that story now.
Hey, hello, Tim. Oh, yeah, and Dave, too. No, I'm just kidding. Anyways, how you guys doing? The story I'm going to tell today is one of my own, actually. I am an electrician by trade, and my company had this long-term contract with this senior community, I guess you can call it. It wasn't more like a senior home, it was a community. There was like a hospital area, a condominium area, a regular housing area, just depending on the level of dependency that the residents needed. So anyways, I was in the condominium area, and basically what we did was, after the residents would pass away, the company that I worked for, they would renovate, the house, the apartment, condo, whatever it was, to fit for the next resident that moved in. So I was just finishing up all my work at this point. I believe I was working on a light switch at the time, and since it was just me by myself, I decided to kind of goof off a little bit. So I kind of put my screwdriver down and picked my phone up and started, messing around. And at this point, I was standing in the kitchen facing the door that led out of the kitchen to the outside. So I'm right there plugging away at my phone, and all of a sudden, I see the doorknob twisting and turning, and the door is opening. So my first thought was, here comes the boss. So I put my phone away, pick up my screwdriver again, and pretend I'm fixing the switch. And at that point, the door just swings open, and that's it. So I walk up to the door, I look, and I notice that the screen door is still closed and locked on the other side. And when I unlock that and open it, I realize that I'm standing at the balcony, and I'm on the second floor, and there's no way to get there. So at first I thought it was a maintenance guy coming to check up on me, but I believe it was a resident who had just passed away a month prior to that. So first thing I did was I got on the phone, called my wife and said, "Hey babe, guess what I just saw?" So yeah, I told the maintenance guys about that later on that day, and they pretty much told me all of their stories. And hopefully I can call back and say some of those stories.
How's that for an on-the-job spookiance? I'll leave the puns to Dave. That didn't really roll off the tongue. There you go. That's a contractor who, let's just say, was getting a little paranoid from all the scares. I might be a little paranoid at my job if ghosts just started showing up in the middle of recording. I might jump too. I wouldn't lie. Mike in Mesa, Arizona joins us now, and he's got not necessarily a spooky story, but a place for us to find a spooky story. And he tells one of a spooky story or a legend in Arizona. Here's Mike from Mesa, Arizona to tell us more.
Hey, Tim. Mike from Mesa, Arizona here. I don't have a story for you, but I just wanted to give you a heads up on something you should look into. I also loved the show from Tombstone. That rocked, guys. I'm glad you guys can make it to this beautiful state and see some history. All right, there is a teacher at Hamilton High School in Chandler, Arizona, who has done a story, I guess, every year at Halloween. It's called The Kimberly Story. Again, it's The Kimberly Story. You can find a choppy audio, a low audio version of it out there online. But it's definitely an interesting story. I guess he tells us every year to his classes around Halloween. It's gone kind of viral from what I've read, but I don't ever remember hearing it. But one of my clients' kids told me about it. So Google The Kimberly Story. Take a listen. Maybe you can get the guy that tells it on one time and just play an episode of it for Darkness Radio. I think that'd be very fitting for this podcast. Anyway, guys, honestly, love you guys a lot. Been listening to you guys for years now. Of course, I'm part of Midnight of the Desert and your podcast, all that jazz. Have a great day and hang in there, and hope you guys have a healthy winter, especially, Tim, with your diabetes and stuff. Take care. Bye.
All right, thanks, Mike. And again, if you're looking for the Kimberly story, the Kimberly story is pretty interesting. It's a scary urban legend told by Ed Hermansky. You might have heard Mike tell you about Ed there for a second. You can listen to that audio recording online. I'm going to give you an address here in a second where you can actually go to it and hear it. Again, Ed was a history teacher in middle school, or he is rather, in Chandler, Arizona. Every Halloween, he would tell his students that chilling, scary story. And over the years, the tale of horror was spread by word of mouth, and now it has that terrifying reputation. That same reputation that Mike's heard of and Mike wanted you to know about. He absolutely wants you to hear the story. In fact, I thought, well, the Kimberly story, Is it really worth it? So I went and I listened to it. It's 55 minutes long, folks. It's kind of long for us to play back for you here, but I found it kind of fascinating when I started listening to it. So I thought, you know what? I'm going to go look for the link here, and I'm going to give you the link over the air. Normally, we kind of try to stay away from giving you links to the outside sources and whatnot unless we put it in the description of the show. But I figured I'd give it to you here, and then we'd also put it in the description of the show as well, so that you have it in both places. What's interesting about this story, before I give you the link to the outside story, and so you can go ahead and go to the story and listen to it. Now, Mr. Hermansky goes ahead and he says that the story is based on true events that happened when he was teaching middle school in Fabens, Texas, and that there was a girl in his class named Kimberly, and that she was absent for almost 2 weeks. When she returned, she was wearing a dirty, tattered nightgown and kept repeating over and over again, "Poor Kimberly, poor Kimberly." Police found the dead bodies of her parents buried in her backyard. This is kind of the setting for the story. Now, what Ed went on to say was she had this evil, evil look on her face, and she was dirty. She had blood on her fingers, and she said, "Shh, they're here." And I said, "Who's here?" And she said, "The ones who live in the walls." Ooh. The Kimberly story, again, is about 55 minutes in this clip that I'll tell you about, or give you the link for. And the audio quality, I'm going to warn you, not the greatest, okay? But it is worth a listen. It's worth sitting down for. It's unique. It's original. Does freak a lot of people out. And I will warn you, the URL for this is scary for kids. So if you're an adult, you may go, "Oh, Tim, I don't know." There's also another warning here. The people who've listened to it have experienced weird events. You may experience some weird events yourself, especially on a Halloween night, if that's when you're listening to this. Some people hear mysterious noises. Others suddenly have their lights go out and the electricity might switch off. Some even get strange phone calls that can't be traced. A few also claim to have seen a girl in a long white nightgown walking by outside their window. Now, we don't claim any responsibility if you go to this URL and want to hear the Kimberly story. If any of this stuff happens to you, Beyond the Darkness takes no responsibility or liability. So with that in mind, here is your URL to listen to the Kimberly story, should you choose to. It's scaryforkids.com/Kimberly-story with another slash. Once again, scaryforkids.com/Kimberly-story with another slash. That's where you can find the Kimberly story and the audio of Ed Hermansky telling you that story. It's about 55 minutes, and you too can listen to Ed tell that fateful story of Kimberly and her dead parents. Okay? There you go. We set the scene for that one. I can't wait for you to hear it. Let's just say I have a girl in a white nightgown outside my window right now. I'm not looking, though. That's it. I'm not going to turn my head to the left. Just saying. Now you have a better idea what my studio looks like. My window is it's right there to the left. Let's go on to the next story so I don't have to focus on that girl in the nightgown, shall we? Okay. Let's go to Amanda, who has an interesting story. This is actually very interesting because it's about a pervy shadow person. Turns out that Amanda, let's just say, is all alone in her apartment. And being so, she doesn't have to shut the bathroom door. No, she doesn't. She's free as a jaybird. But Amanda, you might want to learn to close your doors because shadow people have no boundaries. Here's Amanda talking about why she doesn't like to be looked at by the pervy shadows. Here it is.
Hey guys, this is Amanda. I love the show. I'm going to share two experiences that I had in my previous apartment. I lived there for a little over 10 years, and man, things were crazy. When I first got there, the apartment felt very open, but also muted. Like, at the same time, it was weird, but everything was fine for about a year when I encountered a shadow. No ands, ifs, or buts about it. It was a shadow. It was about 4 feet tall. Well, anyways, I lived alone, and so I never closed the bathroom door, while using the facilities. And so I'm sitting there, and I suddenly got the feeling that I was being watched. The hair on my arm stood up. And I noticed a shadow just outside the bathroom. It stood in the corner of the little hall, which was really just a squared space. Had the bathroom door where I was, bedroom door on the left. Right across from me was the exit door to the outer hallway, and a doorway into the kitchen on the right. Well, there shouldn't be a shadow there. I looked around, what could be casting the shadow? And I made sure that it wasn't my shadow from the bathroom light. So I watched it, pretending not to, and I just knew, this is really there. So I looked at it. It'd kind of move a little bit like a person trying to stand very still but couldn't. So I figured that I should address this little perv. So I looked right at it, and I said, I can see you, right? And boom, it flew to the right into the kitchen. I never saw it again. I figured it was probably just curious. I didn't feel threatened or afraid or anything. A lot of time passed after that with nothing really going on. The building was sold. Nothing odd happened. Then I had a dream visit, and that may have been the opening to some really pretty terrifying future events that occurred there, but I'm not for sure. I was dreaming. I was dreaming that I was back in the house I grew up with, in my parents' house, but no one was there. I figured that they must be asleep. My brother and sister must be upstairs sleeping. My parents must be in their room sleeping which is on the main floor. I went into the living room, and the dream started to shift into the vision dream where you actually, you're about to get some information. So it started to shift, and a cigarette fell from the ceiling, stuck upright into a small pile of ashes. And then the smell of something burning just filled the room. And I'm trying to think, okay, I'm a kid. I'm supposed to be a kid. Did Mom forget she was cooking and she fell asleep? I better go check. So I started into the kitchen when all of a sudden I was hit by this feeling that I should not be there. I was about to be in trouble, and I couldn't figure out why. And I'm like, well, I guess it's because I'm a kid. It's late. I'm supposed to be in bed. So I raced for my bed, which the dream changed, and I threw myself onto my bed, like my current bed in my apartment, and it was dark, and someone was coming. And I heard them outside the bedroom. They were carrying something, and there was a rustling like a large winter coat rubbing against itself in the walls, and I felt fear. I didn't know what was going on, but I knew I needed to pretend to be asleep. Someone came into my room, stood at the foot of the bed, and started to crawl onto it next to me. And they laid next to me, and they were ice cold. Their arms went around me, and as they went around me, they turned me towards them to face them. And I peeked, and I was face to face with this dark face. It was supposed to be my deceased maternal grandfather. It was supposed to be my grandpa. But it was a horrible, horrible representation of them. And he said, "Where are the others?" And I'm thinking it crazy in my head. I'm like, this is a dream. Okay, I'm a kid. I was at home. He must mean my brother and sister. So I'm like, at school? Is what I said. And he said, "Your mother needs you now." I'm like, okay. And I'm scared. I feel terror. And his face, just a few inches from my own, started to change. It darkened. It got even darker. His mouth filled with these small needle-like teeth. His whole face changed as he started to squeeze me tighter and tighter and tighter, and I couldn't get away. And then two hands rose up between us. They were white. I could see the palms and the wrists down, that's all I could see between us. And these two white hands came up between us and pushed me away, and I woke up. And then 2 weeks later, my mother went into the hospital. She, it was one thing after the other. She went between the hospital and the rehab center, and she only got to go home during 6 months. She got to go home once for a day and had to go back. Then she passed away. And I wonder to this day, was that my grandpa's spirit? He was said to have been abusive and alcoholic, not a very good husband or father. But I only had fond memories of him. And in his later years, before he passed, we had bonded. And I wonder, was he in hell? What did he have to go through to get that message to me? Or was it the dark entity that, plagued me afterwards? Was it just messing with me? Whatever it was, I'm still grateful for those protective hands that got me out of there that night. And I don't know, that incident sparked off a whole series of events that lasted for years and years. And after years of battling that darkness in that apartment, there are a few things that I'm fairly certain of. One is negative or black energy does share future events. Also, if you see a black clouds can cloak the being within it. And salt works very well, and it lasts. That's all for now. Keep it up, you two. I love you. All right. Bye.
Thanks, Amanda. Here's hoping you don't like to sit starkers on the loo. Because, if you do, the shadow people have gotten an eyeful by now. Just saying. Let's go to Chris in Eastern Kentucky. He's got a black-eyed kid story for us, and kind of an interesting one at that. Chris, take it away.
Hey, Dave and Tim. This is Chris from Eastern Kentucky. I became aware here recently of the Hellier docuseries that's coming out. And whenever I read the details about it, I found it to be, it's one of those kind of things where, I don't know if you've ever experienced where, I know you talk a lot about serendipity and, coincidences and all that stuff, but this is sort of like one of those major scales where like your life just kind of turns around and meets you again. What I mean by that is, I served in the military as a 101st Airborne. I trained at Fort Belvoir up in Washington, D.C., had a secret clearance. My job was a geospatial analyst, so I worked with the military's version of like Google Earth. And I live in Eastern Kentucky. Hellier's about 10 miles from me here. And as a young boy, I had encounters with these bald kids that I would tell my parents. They I know it sounds stupid, but they didn't have any clothes on, and they were big, oily, round, black, almond-shaped eyes. Typical gray, except they were tannish color. I don't know. I had another experience in my early teens that brought that back to me, and it caused me to ask questions to my family, and that's where I found out that. But anyway, what I'm talking about in terms of geospatial stuff, while I was on a deployment, I was on a 5-man team. I was a 21 Yankee. It's a 21 uniform now. It's the MOS classification. So we had a lot of downtime. Sometimes we worked all night. There's no shifts over there for us. I worked directly under the brigade commander, and so I worked right beside the TOC, not in the TOC, but the Tactical Operations Center. So it was one night, and I was just messing around. I had access to this, this tech, and I thought, well, I'm gonna zoom in and check out my home, Eastern Kentucky. Look at where I grew up and whatever. Now, here's where it gets really crazy and everything ties together. That software has the capability of, and I can't really go into a lot at all about it, but I can say this much. You could do a lot more than you can with satellite or topo with Google Earth. with LiDAR and QuickBird, a few more capabilities of that software. You can analyze soil content. You can see deprivations in the ground. You can see soil content, like I said. You can analyze all kinds of things that you absolutely cannot do with civilian-type technology. So I did that. And what I found was beyond strange, beyond normal at all. From what I was trained to see when I looked at information like this, I can't go into a whole lot about it, but I really can't. I used to hate when people would call and be like, "Oh, I can't really do this." I'm like, go into what it is, but I tell you whatever. I mean, who knows? I could be completely lying, but I'm not. What I can say is this is the only thing I can really say. Greg, I think his name is, right? The guys that did the docuseries. Well, they mentioned in this that they thought in a roundabout way that there was a connection with Brown Mountain, the lights and different things. Okay, so there's a huge cave system from Mammoth Cave all the way to Brown Mountain, which goes directly under the Central Appalachians, which is where I'm at, and so there's a connection. They believe that. When I read that, I got chills because the information that I got is that too. That reinforces that. Now, they were here filming. I had no idea they were here. I live here. I work as a children's book illustrator up a holler in Eastern Kentucky. I moved back here about 4 years ago. I like it here. It's my home, whatever. But when I read that, I didn't know what to do. Crazy. I tried to reach out. I sent him an email. It's just unbelievable. There is something going on. I do believe that the ufologists that are talking about things more inward than outward, there's things here. They didn't come. They maybe come from somewhere else, but they're stationed here. They're not flying here and taking a pit stop and getting gas and going home. But they're here. They're here. Now, here's the crazy thing. After I searched for my home, the geography, and analyzed some of the contours, draws, spurs of this area, and I found what I found. About, 8 hours later, I was called into the main brigade talk. We were in MND North Command, Iraq. So, I was underneath some pretty high brass. I was brought in with my brigade commander, of course, the company first sergeant. And I was interrogated. There was a guy there in a suit. It wasn't a man in black. He was a dude in a suit, but it absolutely had to have been from the Pentagon. I noticed his badge. All I want to say is that they basically told me that, the technology was meant for, and this makes sense, and I was wrong, for planning, for tactical operations. That was my job. It wasn't meant to go in there and go checking out, your home place. So they asked me what I found, that information. They could tell if I resourced or downloaded or copied anything. They can track every movement you make. So they knew that I didn't do anything like that. So I had that much going for me. But I did see what I saw. I know what I know. I cannot prove it. I can't even tell you what it is. The only thing I can tell you is that we are being visited, and Eastern Kentucky, what these guys are doing with this docuseries is tapping into what's actually probably going on, the most prevalent thing in ufology that a lot of people are just overlooking. And what a great place to hide out. Underwater, underground, and in the middle of Central Appalachia where everyone thinks we're crazy anyway. So, I don't know, something to think about. Anyway, thanks for your time. I took a lot up. I love your show. Thanks.
Now, from listening to Chris, it sounds like he might have a little bit of a conspiratorial slant on his deal, but, interesting nonetheless. We'll move on. We have Mr. Joshua standing by, and Mr. Joshua has an interesting little phenomenon show up on his doorstep. Knocks on the door and then hisses at him. It's a shadow person who hisses, and then the fun begins after that. It's quite the interesting little story. Let's go to Mr. Joshua for the rest of the story.
Hey, Dave and Tim. This is Mr. Joshua. Lethal Weapon 1 reference there for you guys. I've been wanting to, first of all, I'm a new fan. I've only been listening to you guys for about a month. I love you guys. I'm obsessed with your Beyond the Darkness show. I have several stories I want to share that I've experienced throughout my life. The first one, I've been wanting to get off my chest for a while. I really don't know how to explain it. I wanted to get your take and ask you or the listeners what you or they think it was that I saw. It's been over 20 years ago now. My family had relocated to St. Albans, West Virginia. There's so many little details. I'm going to try to cram it all in one message here. Back when I was in the 4th grade, my family relocated to St. Albans, West Virginia. And we lived kind of at the end of a cul-de-sac. And if you can imagine, if you can kind of picture, if you're driving in this very quiet neighborhood, on the right-hand side, the houses were on flat land. And on the left-hand side, there was about 4 houses that were down over on a hillside. And it was just a continuous drop, this hillside. The houses were on stilts. That was one of our houses. Our first night there, it was at the end of the summer, and it was probably around 9 p.m. The sun's going down. So it's still light enough to where you can kind of see the outline of things, but it was dark enough to not see kind of what was standing out in front of you. My older brother and me, we shared a room, and there was a sliding glass door that went out to a deck that was, of course, on stilts. If you were to walk out on this deck and look over, I mean, it's just a straight drop. If you jump off this deck, you would at least break your legs and your back, probably worse. But our first night there, we're getting ready for bed, and the blinds were kind of tilted open a little bit, and I heard a knock on the sliding glass door. And my brother says, "Who's that?" And I was just like, "Hey, it's the kid from next door that we just met earlier that day." That's who it looked like from the outline. I propped the blinds to the side to look at this person. I couldn't make the person out. It was a body. It was a physical. I mean, the person was standing right in front of me, but it was just complete. The person was just a shadow because I could not see who it was just because it was so dark outside. So when I opened the blinds and saw this thing, it hissed at me. It put its hands up like it was making claw marks, like it was imitating a cat, and it hissed at me. Well, then it took a couple of steps back, looked at me again, got a running start, and completely hurdled the railing of the deck. And that was it. I really didn't think much of it at the time, but now since I've been listening to your guys' show and hearing other people's stories, I keep thinking, what was that on the deck that night? And it's crazy. I mean, it's freaky when I think about it. I mean, I just get chills, man. You know, it just doesn't sound normal. But anyhow, I wanted your take on it. Have you guys ever experienced something like that? If there are any other listeners that have experienced anything like that. I have other stories I'm going to be calling in and just kind of, I want to tell you guys about. They're not very long. I promise to not be long-winded like I have been with this story. But I do have other stories that I would like to get your take on. Again, I'm a huge fan. You guys rock. Love you guys the best. And I look forward to hopefully hearing my story. Thank you so much. Bye.
All right, Mr. Joshua, that was pretty creepy. I'll tell you that. That raises the old hackles on the arm. I'll say that for sure. Let's go to Sean in Indiana. Sean was incarcerated, but he's very careful to say that he was not in jail. You'll have to listen carefully as to where Sean was and why he was where he was. He too runs into a ghost in kind of a creepy situation. It's an interesting story and one that we had to tell because of he very carefully paints out the isolation, and he does a good job of capturing the fear in this story. Here's Sean from Indiana to explain more about this incarceration ghost.
This is Sean Stoffel. I'm from Elizabeth, Indiana, and I'm currently living in Jeffersonville, Indiana. And I had a recent close encounter whenever I got incarcerated for a DUI back in 2010, I had to do about a year and a half incarceration because I had quite a bit of a drinking problem back in the day in my early 20s. This fourth DUI sent me to a prison, and I was at RDC, the main holding facility before they classify you and send you to your prison classification. Since it was I was a DUI offender, I was classified as a level 1/level 2 DLC holding facility. And I was at the old boys school that's in Plainfield, Indiana. They reformed that old boys school where Axl Rose was at, Charles Manson was at. These were facts. And there were stories from some of the other inmates that told me there. And once I arrived there to finish out my sentence, that said that a bunch of children used to be here, and a lot of them died. A lot of them died from food poisoning, or there was supposedly a big fire in some of the housing facilities that are on site there. And even some people would say that they would see shadowy figures in some of the abandoned buildings or looking out the windows. Now, me understanding of how the age is these days, there's a lot of young people out there on drugs, so they could be hallucinating or just seeing stuff because their minds may have been messed up over the time of, and hurting their bodies with these substances. So me as a, not really somebody who believes in ghosts or the supernatural, because I got to believe it to see it. I'm that type of guy. And it's nice to be able to have an imagination. But I had about 2 weeks left before I was leaving one of those dorms. And I listened to Coast to Coast Radio, actually, at that time. I just started listening to that. Never heard of Darkness Radio, and this was in 2011. And I was sound asleep, and then I heard this bang, 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 real loud, like someone's fist was slamming down on the metal bar that was above my head. And I was on the bottom bunk. And if anybody's going to do that, I'm going to turn around and I'm going to whip their ass. I'm going to thump them. Don't do that to people, especially when you're locked up. That's provoking somebody. You don't mess with people like that. And so I woke up. I immediately sprang up and woke up, and I seen a figure. And it was, my eyes did not play tricks on me. It doesn't do that. And, I've been sober for about a year and a half, so I was clear-minded. And I seen a figure. It was like wearing clothes in a sense. So it went and it ran off, and I had like a little blanket set up to block the light out, and it moved the blanket as it moved. And I immediately jumped up. Like I was probably 3 feet behind this thing after it went around the corner, and I was going to grab hold of it and whip its ass. I was going to slam him. You don't just do that to people. Well, as soon as I turn around that corner, I look out, and everybody's asleep. Everybody. I look up, I look around. You can vaguely see throughout the Bay Area of 60 bunks. There was about 3 aisles. Nobody was in sight. And I went down about 3 or 4 bunks down, where these 2 guys are always up in the middle of the night that read the Bible, where the light hits it good. And I went up to them, I said, "Where'd he go? Where'd he go?" They didn't know what the hell I was talking about. They were just so confused, like, what the hell's wrong with this guy? So I went and I ran to the bathroom. That's the only place anybody could hide. Someone was in there. And I walked around and I went and I met somebody who fit the profile. He was slobbering out of sleep. It was 3:41 in the morning. I went back to my bunk and I sat down, and I had the hair stand up on my back of my neck and arms for the first time in my life, fully realized exactly what it was. And it was a ghost, an apparition, however you say it, spirit. It was one of those boys that died back in the late 1800s. And that is my paranormal experience, and I will take that to my grave. Thank you. Hi, this is Sean again. I would like for y'all to have a lot more information just than based what I was just coming off from my memory. And I got to sit down and think about it. Part of my job was I was a level 1 classification for DUI. So I really wasn't in there for any bad charges or nothing. So I had a job, and my job was able to weed eat and mow grass inside and outside the perimeters of the prison / old boys school, whatever. And I remember going to, there was a little cemetery, maybe probably about, 100 headstones. They were all from the late 1800s. And it would show, I do remember it would show, who was ever this kid. I don't remember, the names of these kids, but they were kids because they were born 1885 to 1895. They were anywhere between 6 and 14 years old. There was lots of these little headstones. And I heard rumors about this before I ever went out there to do it, and there were people telling me about this place. Oh, yeah, whatever, you're all full of crap. Until I was like, man, well, there really is a little cemetery here. And it's actually called the Stop Facility now. And the reason it's called the Stop Facility now is called for Short-Term Offenders Program. So if you have less than a year on your sentence left to do, then you go through this program, and it gives you a 3-month time cut to be able to get out early on your time based on good behavior and all that. I had 8 months left on my sentence. I did 10 months hard time before I got my plea, and then I went straight to the Stop Facility and finished my time there and got my time cut or whatnot. But that place, it's legit. It's for real. In Plainfield, Indiana, you can look it up. I wish I had the information on me right now to be able to tell you, but this is very, very true and very honest. I'm a very skeptical person. I do not believe in a lot of things, but this is for real, and I'm not psychotic or anything like that. This was a very true event that happened, and there was a ghost or a spirit or whatever it was that did bang on my bunk and chose me out of the 66 other people that were within that dorm in one of those old buildings. That was that. And that's exactly what it was. But I have more stories. Thank you very much. Bye.
All right, Sean, thank you very much. Again, kind of creepy, that whole feeling of being trapped and having a ghost torturing you as you're being trapped. That's a frightening, frightening image. Let's go now to Devin, who describes her scenario of growing up in a haunted house.
Hey, Dave. So I've known you a few years, but I realize I've never told you the story of the haunted house that I lived in. So let's roll back the clock a little bit. It's the year 2000. We all survived Y2K. Boy bands were all the rage. And unfortunately, it was prior to paranormal investigating going mainstream on television. When we moved into the house, the first thing I noticed was that the vanity area of my bathroom, super negative energy. Nothing I had ever felt before, but it was definitely the hair standing up on the back of your neck, someone's watching me kind of feeling. In fact, I couldn't even stand in there for very long. To brush my teeth, I actually had to walk out of the bathroom and pace around the hallway, because if I was in that room for any length of time, I would be watching the mirror, making sure the door didn't shut behind me, because I just felt like something had bad intentions and was going to trap me in there. Then, a few months later, I was unpacking groceries in the kitchen, and there was an open doorway. There's no door, it's just open over to my right, and out of my peripheral, I see very distinctly a human, 2 legs, walking by the door. So I thought it was my mom, naturally. She had gone to the grocery store with me, and I started talking to her, just general, hey, Mom, do you remember seeing this? Only she didn't reply, and I thought, wait a second. Did she even come back into the house yet? So I go peer around, and no one's in the house but me. But I can tell you specifically, I saw 2 legs. It wasn't just a mist, it wasn't a shadow. 2 legs. So I run outside, find my mom, tell her, and she said, well, that's funny. A couple of weeks ago, I saw the same exact thing. White mist walking in that same spot, walking toward the den. I just didn't want to scare you, so I never told you. So it wasn't long after that we had a dog that took off running, just bark, 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 like he saw a stranger, stopped in that exact spot where we both saw that mist, and looked up. Like, hi, human. creeped us both out. We both saw it and just like, what are you seeing, Bandit? This is crazy. So I think it's at that point that the spirits realized, hey, they're listening and they know we're here. Because that's when things ramped up just a little bit. So next thing that started would have to be the mimicking. I would wake up many mornings hearing my mom or dad standing over my bed saying, Devin, it's time to get up. And they weren't in my room. They weren't even trying to wake me up. It wasn't time to get up. It was just their voices in my ear. Which naturally, you might think, hey, you're waking up from sleep. You're just hearing things. So I tried to brush it off. Then one day, I'm in another bedroom and hear my brother call me. Hey, Devin, come here for a second. Only he moved out 3 months prior to that. He wasn't at the house. And of course it had to be the room that has the light in the middle of the ceiling that you turn off with the cord. So it's nighttime. I do the quick reach for the cord, try to get my foot as close to the door as I can, switch it off and run out that door because I was freaked out. Nothing should have had my brother's voice. And occasionally you would hear cat noises coming from upstairs when my cat was downstairs. Just constant mimicking. Which now I hear that sometimes that can be negative too, so that I'm glad I didn't know that at the time. Next would be the fact that we had walkie-talkies so that we could talk to each other without having to scream up and down the stairs. And I remember one morning waking up and I hear the shh of the walkie-talkie. So I get up, I stumble over to it. Hey, Mom, did you try to call me? And coming back through walkie-talkie is, no. I know that sounds silly, but it was a very dark, demonic sounding voice. So I say, Mom, you there? Same thing comes through. So I turn off the walkie-talkie, go downstairs, and I go outside where my mom is, and I said, Mom, were you just trying to get me on the walkie-talkie? It sounded funny. And she said, no, I don't even have it with me. It's in the bedroom. And that happens to be a bedroom where she's heard singing before. So I don't know what was trying to talk to me, but it did not sound good. And then getting back to the vanity area, about a year after we moved in, I think it was, I had a dream. And I don't dream of places I know. I don't dream of people I know standardly. But this was full on my room. I know it had to be an out-of-body experience. All the details were there. And I walk to my bedroom door because I hear a noise outside. And when I open it, I see a mom and a son kneeling down by my door, trying to get in. And I take a step back, like, whoa, who are you? And they looked up at me and they said, no, please, you don't have to be scared of us. It's the other one. And at that point, a light starts shining through my vanity door, and they both turn in fear, and I woke up. And that's when I knew there was negative energy there. So I don't know what happened in this house, but definitely I think there are multiple spirits with the negative one and a couple of good ones. So the last thing I can think of right now is the very last day when we moved out. We were pulling out of the driveway and my mom saw the postal worker, so she said, I'm going to stop and tell her that we're leaving. So she's talking to her, and out of my left side I can see someone walking across the street. Mousy brown hair, gray-orange striped sweater, very 50s kind of looking. And at the time, I was super shy. And so I just kind of faced my head forward, not wanting to make eye contact. And I looked in the mirror to watch him pass by. So I had watched him go to the side, and when I look in the mirror, I don't see him anymore. So I said, well, that's weird. He should have passed by now. So I turn around. Nowhere to be seen. So I know I saw a full body, full color apparition. Coolest thing ever now. But at the time, it's just, what do you do about that? So I wish I knew then what I know now, because I would have investigated top to bottom that house. In fact, I would love to go back to that house just to investigate it. I actually need to set up an alert. So if that house goes for sale, I'm going to go take a tour of it and take the equipment with me. But yeah, that was an experience, and I'll never forget it. But I just had to share that with you because I thought you might be interested. Talk to you later. All right. Thank you, Devin. This next person is from Minnesota, and sometimes
Sometimes the phone call itself is just scary. Maybe just because what the person's saying is scary. Not necessarily that the story is scary. You'll find out what I mean here when we play this next phone call. Here we go.
Thank you, Dave. I just want to tell you that I was a young girl in Winona, Minnesota, and I thought, oh, this witch magic, whether it was like funny or something, and it didn't entertain me. However, about a month later, as I was sleeping, this big cloak, something in a big cloak, no face, was looking at me, and I turned myself away because I knew that's not what I wanted. And a couple weeks later, I woke up and my head was wrenched again to the left, like, no, no, no. And I had to call for my father to come up and massage my neck because I was like obviously saying no to the dark entity. But I could not move my neck. When I moved up to the cities in Coon Rapids, I had a home where apparently the contractor, there were 7 houses in a row, he was having an affair, and the wife caught him in our home that was just not even constructed, barely constructed, and she shot him. We bought the home in 1994. 2 years after it was finally complete, and there was an officer of the law that lived there, and they sold the house to us and moved like 3 blocks down. And I don't know, the house was a great price, and I was so happy, but there were very odd things that happened in the home to us after that. I mean, I don't know, but I'd like to talk to you further if we could. Thank you.
And along the lines of sometimes the person can be scary, I gotta rib my buddy Earl in Eastern Kentucky. We had this interesting little game we played last year with Earl. And this is Earl's first phone call to us at Beyond the Darkness. I just put it in here as my own personal scary story. I did a little joke where I was kind of capping on Eastern Kentucky. This is Earl's first phone call to us, and I just threw it in here because I thought it was funny. This is Earl's first phone call, kind of chiding me for making fun of Eastern Kentucky, and then going on with his own paranormal experience. So here's Earl from Eastern Kentucky in his first phone call, and then I'll follow up with what was his scary story after you hear his first phone call. Here's Earl in Eastern Kentucky.
Hello, Mr. Tim. Dave, I do apologize, but this is a bit personal. Mr. Tim, I do want to say I've called about 4 times, left about 3 stories, and none of them have been used. That's fine and dandy, and the ones you pick are very good. By the way, this is Earl calling from Eastern Kentucky. Well, I guess I heard a little something that you said on your little podcast there, talking about Eastern Kentuckians, and I do have to tell you, stereotypes are invasive. They are a terrible thing. Not everybody here does follow the credence or the background of the movie Deliverance. We can pronunciate words, even foreign words, which you seem to have a little bit of trouble doing sometimes, but I understand. We also, don't go to family reunions to meet girls, that sort of thing. But, I do have a paranormal story for you if you do want to hear it. If you don't want to play it, that's fine too. So here we go. When I was a little boy, I was walking in a graveyard real late at night, and I had a little goat called Thilo, and Thilo was walking with me. Thilo got a little scared. I got a little freaked out, wondering what he was up, and I looked around. True story, this happened. I saw an orb, and it was late at night. It was raining. The street light wasn't blue far away, but I did see an orb, and it raised up from a grave. It was blue. It was hovering. It looked like a ball of energy, and I saw it. I got real scared. I didn't know what to do. My whole life been wondering what it was. Got interested in your show. Started listening. Everybody calling in talking about these little orbs they catch on cameras, which we all know are dust particles. But when your eyes see it for your own self and you're a little boy, you ain't tripped out on LSD or nothing other mushrooms or any other type of thing, then you tell me what it is. It's a true story. It was a blue orb hovering above a grave. I saw it, watched it. It dissipated as I walked away slowly, and it's a true story. So my goat deal saw it first, so that tells you animals might be able to see something too, because he got spooked. But anyway, you do have listeners in here in the good old hills of Eastern Kentucky, so be kind, be nice. We do appreciate it, because we do love you both. All right then, take care. Darkness Radio. Woo!
So as it turns out, that's Earl trying to make my life scary. Now, what made Earl's life scary, and I wish we had more time, I would play his next phone call, where Earl is on the line with me and his wife is in the background, basically asking him if he's calling those fancy girls. Because, yes, he cites that our number is one number off from a service in which you can get a hold of those fancy girls, you know, those ones that talk naughty to you on the phone. And everybody kept asking, is Earl fake? Is he a fake character that you guys made up for the show? And we kept saying, no, absolutely not. He's not. He's real. And nobody believed us. They thought Earl was a character that either I was doing or Dave was doing. And we said, no, Earl is absolutely real. He's an absolutely real guy in Eastern Kentucky who is a faithful listener, and he just was just giving us a taste of our own medicine. Although it turns out the wife was not too happy with Earl and his fancy girl ways, as it turns out, when he would misdial the number, which, by the way, the number is 651-300-4977. If you want to call in and give your true paranormal experiences or your scary stories, we'd love to hear from you. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I do not, by the way, know what the fancy girl number is. I would be interested to know what it is. Not that I want to call it. I just, to ward people off from the fancy girl number. So just, it's just a number of, a matter of public safety to ward them off from the fancy girl number, not to throw business their way. You know what I'm saying? It's public safety. I assure you that. 2 more stories left here in the program, folks, on your Halloween for 2019. It's been a fun night, just kind of sitting around and sharing listener stories, true stories, by the way, of scary nature and paranormal nature on a Halloween, and just sitting around the digital campfire, the warm glow of your digital device, and some spooky stuff to eat your candy by, your Halloween candy by. Here's one that will absolutely terrify you. Negron from Connecticut is a truck driver, and he claims that he's had an encounter with a black-eyed grandpa. I kid you not. A black-eyed grandpa. You got to hear it for yourself. Here's Negron.
Hey guys, this is Negron up here in Connecticut. I'm a truck driver, and I got a fantastic story that I labeled Black-Eyed Grandpa. And everyone so often, used to hear in the black-eyed kid stories and whatnot. And one year, this is about 4 years ago maybe, like I previously stated, I'm a truck driver up here in Connecticut. I'm a grocery hauler. And I had taken a particular load out to Hawley, Pennsylvania one year. And I was up on I-84, and it was about 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning, and I had to pull over and, do a friendly business there on the side, a little rest area. So as I'm pulling in, there's no one there. I pull parallel to the parking spaces. So I take up this entire area, and as us commercial drivers, our outdoor bathroom is between our truck and trailer. And so I got out, I left the truck running, I turned my headlights off, and so I have all my running lights going on at this point. I exit the truck, I get to the passenger side between the tractor and the trailer, and halfway through, I feel a tap on my shoulders, and it startled me. I leaped all over my darn self, and when I turned around, there was an older gentleman. He had asked me, "Sir, I have lost my dog. Could you help me?" And I said a few syllables towards him, and, he scared the heck out of me. And I said, "Hold on a minute." So, I flip zip and turn around, and this gentleman's gone. Literally within seconds. I can't see him. Now, it's dark out. 3:30, in the morning. And I'm looking around. So I break the driver's, the blinker arm there, and being so frantic trying to find the headlights, I finally turn the headlights on, and lo and behold, there is this old man who is standing right in front of me, about 10, 15 feet directly in front of my tractor. Okay? And the eyes, that was what I zoned in on first, because it was something that I have never seen in my life before. This gentleman had the most blackest eyes, as if there was just an empty vessel standing in front of you that was just lifeless, man. Like a million-mile stare, man, just right at you. Blank face, blank expression, no emotion, just morbidly dead and black. And the moment I saw that, boy, I got out of there. Needless to say, I got the hell out of Dodge. I'm sitting here, man, I'm shifting and grinding and chirping and skipping all sorts of shit for my gears. I finally get out of there. I'm panicking, all sorts of weird crap going on. And I had about an hour to get to my stop. I get to the store. The gentleman sees that I'm terribly disturbed. Something's on my mind. And he says, "Boy, what is your deal, man? You act like you done seen a ghost, like you're looking around the corners before you enter them and all sorts of crap. What are you doing?" And so I says, "You know what, man? This may sound very strange to you, but I really got to get this off my chest, and I'm not the kind of individual to go, and share this type of stuff. This is the first time anything like this has ever happened to me, but I got to get it out." So I go into this telling him this entire story. And towards the end of it, he's actually kind of chuckling, and and I'm finding this disturbing, okay? And I ask him, "What is your deal? Well, this ain't funny, man." He says, "Hey, by any chance that you happen to see when you were at that rest area that, when you look down that cliff, down that mountain, there's all those lights on, like a little village?" And I says, "Dude, I wasn't sightseeing, man. I was literally here for a reason, not a season, And I get, he gets to telling me that that's where he grew up. It was a little tiny town down there, and that's where he grew up. And that when he was a child, this was before 84, I-84 came through there. There was, the top of this mountain was a summit called Prospect Summit or whatever, something like that. And so this gentleman grew up down there. People used to go up to the top of this mountain and have picnics and, what have you. There's a couple picnic tables up there, I guess, that were up there. And I guess one year, that man had gone up there with his dog, and they got trapped by a really bad storm. And they got forced to come back down, and unfortunately they got caught up in a mudslide, and I guess they perished, him and the dog. And he ended up, they lost their lives, and that was the end of that. And I'm not the first person who's, I guess, come up with this same experience of this man asking for help. from people who work at the rest area at a certain time of the day. And so, yeah, that's my story of Black-Eyed Grandpa. Needless to say, I've never gone back to that area. I don't plan on it. I came back that day and told dispatch, don't you ever send me to the store ever again, or you can have my key and badge. And they had asked me why. I told them briefly what happened, and they thought it was very comical, but I didn't. But that's my story. I'm a long-time listener. This is Negron, truck driver up here in Connecticut. And thank you very much for doing everything that you guys do out there for people, helping them out. And, yeah, thank you very much. Take care.
Wow, Negron, I don't blame you. If I ran into something like that while I'm out on my route, I'd want them to take me off that deal too. That's just weird. That's just bizarre. I don't know how, especially if you're an over-the-road truck driver and you run into stuff like that, how you maintain the nerve to keep going out on the road. I don't know. Our last story tonight has to do with an absolutely disgusting turn of events from history. That's the only way I can put this. We got a call from a man in Florida. Of course, it's going to end with Florida Man tonight. Somehow it had to. Somehow 2019's Halloween had to end with Florida Man from history. And it's going to. Distant history, far history, way back in the 1800s. In Augustine, Florida. And let's just say we're going to blow stuff up. That's what we're going to do tonight. That's how we're going to end it. No, it's not the 4th of July. It's Halloween, but we're going to blow stuff up. That's how we're going to end Halloween of 2019. Let's go to that story now and prepare to be grossed out.
Yeah, hey, David, Tim. I actually just wanted to contribute a little story. Now, it's actually not a story that happened to me. Rather, it's actually a story of something that happened in the town I live in back in the late 1800s. And it's not really a ghost story. I guess you couldn't call it that, but it's more just connected to the paranormal. But anyway, back in the late 1800s, there was a very, very popular bishop that lived here in this town in St. Augustine, Florida, he died in the mid-1880s, I believe, and I'm not 100% sure of his name. I used to know, I can't remember it now, but anyway, he died, and he was very well known and liked. So they didn't want to bury him there right then and there, because they wanted to give people who liked him, friends, people who liked him, to come and pay respect to him. So back then, they didn't have embalming techniques or the cryo or anything that they use to keep people or embalming fluid or anything like that to preserve bodies now that they have now. So they're trying to figure out how to keep his body preserved for people to come and see him, because back then when the cars took days and days for people to get here, they decided to just try to put him in a coffin and just pour ice over him, keep pouring ice over him. And also, he died in mid-August, so it was incredibly hot here, especially with no air conditioning back then. So they kept trying to preserve his body with ice, kept him on ice, I guess you'd say, for a little over a week, and then finally had his funeral in the cathedral here about a week and a half after he actually died. And they had a special glass coffin made for him, and about a week and a half after he died, they had a big service held for him. He was in the cathedral, in the big room with his coffin in the middle, and as all the people are in there paying their respects to him and whatnot, his body exploded, and the coffin, which was thankfully open, it wasn't shut, and thus sending glass particles everywhere in people's faces. But anyway, his body actually exploded in little bits, sprayed all over the people inside. It was smelled horribly, and they ended up having to get everyone out of there. They had to go and get brooms and stuff. They try to get up all the bishop bits, I guess you'd call them, and scoop them all back into the coffin, and then they sealed the coffin up and then just planted him in the ground. But even though most people and scientists now think that he basically just exploded because all the gas and stuff in his body was just finally all the pressure made him explode, but there are the people to this day that still believe that he exploded because his spirit or soul, whatever you may call it, was very angry at his body not being buried in this timely manner. So anyway, I just thought I'd contribute that little story to your show. I love all the podcasts and hope you both are doing well.
Great googly moogly. Dead bodies exploding. Oh, if that doesn't make you hungry for more candy, nothing will. Just saying. How else would you want to end your scary stories tonight but with a bang? Just saying. Happy Halloween, everybody. It's perfect. It's perfect. That'll do it. Thanks for joining us for our Halloween special for 2019. We want you to join us this weekend for our weekend shows. Saturday, of course, you got Supernatural News and Parashare. We'll be taking more of your phone calls and your emails and reading your true paranormal stories and your supernatural stories, and, of course, any scary stories you've had. If you've had a run-in with Sasquatch, or you've been abducted by an alien, or just had a plain old run-in with a ghost or a demon, you can call us at 651-300-4977. That is our Voices from Beyond line. It's open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and you can leave your message there. You have up to 3 minutes to deliver your message on that loop there. If your message is a little longer than 3 minutes, then by all means, just call right back and continue your message, and I will take and stitch everything together and make a nice little story out of it. Let's just not keep stitching until you've managed to give the Gettysburg Address, because then that's a little too long. Let's keep her down. I appreciate that. But that'll do it. That'll do it. For Dave Schrader, I'm Tim Dennis. Hope you've had a safe and happy Halloween, that you've raked in lots of candy, that you had a great costume, and that you just had a darn good time. I know I did. So we'll see you this weekend for Beyond the Darkness. And, of course, remember, True Crime Tuesday is coming up on Tuesday. This last Tuesday, we had Mark Anthony on. We were talking about the witch's curse. If you haven't subscribed yet, go to patreon.com/truecrimetuesday. It's only $5 a month. And we've got some great topics over there. 135 programs are available for you right now to listen to your heart's content. And again, it's just $5 a month. You get access to all the archives and the brand new shows. We'll see you this weekend, folks. Thank you for listening to this special Halloween edition of Beyond the Darkness.